What is going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. As you saw in the last video, we sent off the stolen R32 Skyline to paint. It's in good hands and hopefully we get it back soon. We also picked up this RB25 DET Neo motor that we're going to be tearing down today, and this is going to go into the 32 Skyline and hopefully make some decent power. Now, to catch you guys up to speed, we bought this R32 Skyline from Facebook, pulled the motor out of it, and well, we found out that it had been blown up. So we installed another RB20 from, of course, Facebook, and now we are here. Now, some of you guys might be questioning why we didn't put the RB25 into the R32 originally, and why we're doing it after painting the car, because usually you would do things the other way. Well, the simple answer is registration. And in order to roadworthy the car, we need to get it running and driving with the original motor. And then after that, we can engineer the R32 with the bigger RB25 Neo. So this is not my first rodeo. I've actually torn down a few motors in the past. And of course, we're gonna be taking extra care with this thing because 25s aren't exactly cheap and they're getting harder to find. There's a few different revisions of the RB25, I believe. There's a Series 1, Series 2, and also a Series 2 Neo, or just the Neo. And basically the Neo, of course, being the last revision of the RB25, is the best version of the RB25. It's got all the restrictors from factory. It's got bigger conrods, I'm pretty sure. It's the reason why I chose this motor over the other two. It has coil on plug, whereas I believe the older ones have like the old igniter system that the RB20s come out with. But today we're going to be taking the head off this thing, and I've got some interesting stuff to tell you about this particular motor because it turns out a lot has been done to this thing in the past. So yeah, let's get right into it. I know you guys wanted a longer video, so let's strip this thing down. So before I bought this RB25, I asked a few questions to the previous owner, and it turns out he never had it running and he bought it off somebody else, which is far from ideal. But the person he bought it from had compression numbers, and as you can see, the compression numbers are pretty similar across all cylinders. And at one point, this thing did have like an eBay high mount turbo on it, as you can tell from this photo, and of course, this oil drain line, which is huge. This RB25 DET also has, for some reason, a MLS head gasket, but I was told by the previous owner that it does not have ARP head studs and it's just got the original head bolts. Usually when you're installing an MLS, you would upgrade to head studs, so that kind of tells me that this engine was put together by people who didn't really care. Anyway, we started by pulling off the valve covers, which are just held on together with some 10mm bolts, and surprisingly, the cams and the head seemed like they were in very good condition. There was no scoring marks anywhere, the cams looked shiny, and of course with the head being off, they probably had it cleaned, and the oil that was still in the head looked pretty good. Now on the cams, there was a little bit of surface rust from the engine sitting for a long time because apparently it hasn't run in like 3 or 4 years, but luckily the rust wasn't on the cam lobes, so it should be okay. There was, however, a little mark on the valve cover, as you can see, probably from when the engine was being transported around, which is not the worst thing in the world. But as you can see, yeah, the head looks like it's in fantastic condition. I then started to remove all the front timing case stuff, so this cam sensor that just comes off with 3 10mm bolts. Basically what this does is sends a signal to the ECU to tell what position the cam is in, and then to remove the front cover there are just a few more 10mm bolts. I think there's about 4 of them, and then the timing case cover comes off, just like that. And to my surprise, everything looked pretty good in here. I then removed the water pump pulley, which is held on by some 10mm bolts. And then I needed to remove the harmonic balancer. The harmonic balancer is held on by a 27mm bolt, pretty dang big, and there is also a washer in there, so you gotta make sure you take that out as well. We need to remove this harmonic balancer in order to remove the lower timing case, but in order to do so, you do need a special tool, which I have here. Basically how this works is it bolts into the harmonic balancer. On the special tool, there's a 19mm bolt that goes right down in and presses onto the crankshaft, and that essentially pries away the harmonic balancer from the crank, and with this tool it comes off with ease. I'm not entirely sure whether or not I'm going to be using this harmonic balancer. A lot of people do upgrade them because apparently they do break and come apart, and you don't want that on an interference motor. I then removed the lower timing case, which was held on by about 3 or 4 10mm bolts, and again everything looked pretty good. No signs of crazy wear. And there's also this like little washer that stops the timing belt from coming off. So that just literally pops off just like that. I then went ahead and removed all the spark plugs and everything looked pretty good. There wasn't any signs of detonation and the spark plugs also looked like they were a bit dark, which is good because you'd rather the engine be running rich than lean. If the engine was running lean, the spark plugs would be a little bit white. We then had Lachlan come around to help me with the rest of it because he's done this before. The next step was to take the timing belt off, which will then allow us to remove the cam gears and then the cams. And good practice is to put the engine in top dead center. There are timing marks on the engine, on the crankshaft, and the cam gears. And I was a little bit confused because for some reason the timing marks weren't lining up. With the crankshaft timing mark lined up, you can see that dot lines up with that mark. The cam gears looked like they were about one tooth off on both the intake and exhaust side. If you guys have any idea on why this has happened, please let me know. But it was kind of scary knowing that this engine wasn't timed correctly. I then pulled off the timing belt tensioner with a 14mm bolt that just slides off. And good practice is to put the nuts and washers back in the same spot so you don't lose them. And then the timing belt just comes off like that. The timing belt looked like it had a little bit of wear on it from, I guess, the years of it being driven, but no cracks, which is a good sign. The next step was to remove the cam gears, and we're just removing the intake side here with an Allen key. You take this off to expose the bigger Allen key nut underneath. This is just a cover to hold the oil in. As you can see, there's a bunch of oil just pouring out of this VCT gear. Basically, with higher RPM, the more pressure gets put in this VCT gear, which changes your cam position, allowing for more power down low and up top. And then I had Lachlan help me remove the cam gears. Okay, we are now taking off the cam gears. So on RB25 Neos, they have this VCT gear, and we need to remove that as well as the other gear on the other side. And in order to remove those gears, you need to hold the cam in place, get yourself a 10mm socket, 10mm Allen. Oh, I got it. And just like that, the VCT cam gear comes off. On the other side, to remove the cam gear, there are 11mm bolts and this plate. You need to remove those. And you also need to remove the cover on the cam gear. Then you can remove the exhaust cam gear. And then you can remove the backing plate, which is a bunch of 10mm bolts as well. And then it was time to remove the cams. Now, in order to remove the cams, there is a sequence involved so you don't break them, because if you remove the cam caps incorrectly, then you can actually crack the cam in half. So in order to remove them correctly, you need to go from the inside and move outwards. So loosen the inside bolts first, then followed by the outside bolts. We looked at the repair manual in order to do this. The cams are going to slightly come up, but you're just going to be consistent, and then eventually with all the cam caps off, you can remove, of course, the cam. I then removed all the buckets using a magnetic tool, and I just put a little bit of oil. As you can see, they were very easy to remove. I've had stubborn ones in the past, so that was a relief. And of course, when I'm placing them on the table, I'm making sure to place them in order. You don't want to mess this up because it could change the gap in between the cam and the buckets. So like I said, this engine has head bolts, which are just the standard head bolts. And I believe it's a 10mm Allen key bit that fits into the head bolt. In order to remove the head, you need to go from the inside out. So we followed that sequence. I had Lachlan help me hold the engine in place, going from the inside, followed by the middle to the outside. And once they're entirely loose, you can take all the bolts off, and then it's basically time to remove the head. Alright guys, we are now ready to take the head off the RB25. So that was about an hour, squished down into probably about 5 to 10 minutes for you. But we've got the head studs out, we've still got the valve springs in there. I have no idea what to expect when we pull this thing up. What do you reckon, Lachlan?
I think it should be fine. Squeaky clean inside, it's got a head gasket already.
That's odd, you're usually the pessimist in this situation.
Well, it's an RB25. God's motor's brother.
God's motor's brother. 3, 2, 1. Oh, holy
good.
Holy crap. Hot damn. Just a bit of crap there.
That looks good.
Before we really get tearing down this motor, guys, I just want to say thank you to everyone who's ordered one of these hoodies at BinkySpec.com. Your orders would have been sent out over the past week, so check your mailbox. It's wintertime, guys, and it's time to grab yourself a hoodie. And we just released these hoodies with probably one of my favorite designs of all time, with the stolen R32 Skyline. So go check it out at BinkySpec.com. This design was inspired from my last trip to Japan, wishing that I could have my R32 Skyline in Japan. If you want to help support the channel, that's the best way to do so. Let's tear down this motor. Let's go. Okay, I may have celebrated a little bit too early, I'm not gonna lie. Everything felt fine from where we had the pistons at, but when we rotated the motor a little bit, it seems like because the motor's been sitting for a long time, the condensation has sort of like, I don't know, you can kind of feel it with your finger, but when you rotate the motor, it feels incredible. Like, it literally feels
effortless.
So smooth. I've never felt a motor spin that smoothly. Yeah, it doesn't look like it's from the engine actually running. Looks like there has been some condensation over time because this motor hasn't run in literally years. I'm gonna have to ask some professionals to see what I should do next, but yeah, pretty disappointing. Now this of course does mean that we are gonna have to hone this motor. We're gonna have to get a machine shop to run a hone down there, and depending on how bad it is, we're gonna have to probably go oversized pistons. I don't know yet, but we're gonna take this all apart because yeah, unfortunately, it's not looking that good. I never drained the oil out of this thing, so let's see what happens when we drain the oil, shall we? Well, that's not good. Don't know what's going on here, but it's pretty gluggy. Oil's coming out almost like grease, man. Looks like they might have used like oil stabilizer in this thing or something. Oh man. Oh. It's almost like the oil is slightly milky. I don't 100% know. There you guys go. It's like a little bit milky. Or it could just literally be oil stabilizer. I don't know. All right, let's flip this thing around. Because of the cylinder bores, unfortunately, we are going to have to take the pistons out. And that means taking off the oil pan, which is going to give us a good idea of what this engine has been through. To get the oil pan off, it's a bunch of 10mm bolts. There are quite a few of them. I'm using a power tool to make this quicker. But this is where things get really, really bad. Oh no! Oh no! God damn. Not ideal. This is why you don't buy used motors unless you know a lot more about them than just compression numbers, I guess. But here we go, guys. There's the pickup. Now, I don't know if that's metal on there, but the pickup's covered in crap. It's covered. Oh my god. Doesn't look like metal. It looks like this thing blew a head gasket or something. I suspect, yeah, this thing's blown a head gasket because they didn't install it correctly. So they've ended up with some really milky oil. Look at that. Oh my god. Yeah, there's no metal anywhere, which is good, which means it probably, yeah, just did a head gasket. Might have got a little bit hot. But yeah, we're gonna take this all apart, which is far from ideal. It's part of the game, man. Part of the game. We're gonna now remove all the pistons. I'm gonna start off by taking off number 1 through 6, and we're gonna see how good the bearings are. I'm scared. Okay, well, that looks pretty good. Let me just get a photo of that. So we don't have a spun bearing, but the bearings definitely have seen a lot of heat. Let me get that focusing. You can see there's like heat spots on the bearing, but I can't feel anything with my finger, which that means that we can conclude that the crank should be okay, and it's looking pretty smooth. Doesn't look like there's any marks on the crank, so that's a W, I guess. Yeah, that's not ideal. Okay, piston number 1 is out. Oh god. There are a few things that may have caused this engine from running hot, but I suspect that it was the incorrect installation of the head gasket. When running an MLS head gasket on RBs, it is highly recommended that you deck the block to make sure that your engine is completely flat so that the MLS head gasket seals, and after looking at the block, it looks like someone has just placed the MLS head gasket on without removing the old gasket material off the block. Another problem that may have caused this milky sludgy oil is the oil cooler on the side of the block. This is where coolant flows through to cool essentially your engine oil. However, I haven't heard of these failing. The last possibility that I can think of is the use of engine stabilizer, which is a thick oil that you can add to your engine if there is any noise coming from your engine. I'm not 100% sure what the problem is, but let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. So we got all the pistons out, and it is not looking ideal, but it's not looking too bad, guys. Pretty much Every single one of these bearings, it looks like though, have been impacted with, I guess, too much heat. You can see it got very hot, and that's why there's these black marks on the bearings, or maybe that's just normal wear and tear, but nothing you can feel with your fingernail, which is pretty good. We've got no spun bearings, which is ideal, and we could have definitely just ran this motor and it probably would have been okay for a while, but yeah, under a lot of boost, I don't know. The crank has no marks on it whatsoever, nothing you can feel with your finger as well. So it's looking like we're just gonna have to put some new bearings in this motor. So I'm gonna take the crankshaft out as well, and we'll get some main bearings and also some bearings for the pistons, and we should be okay. The only concerning part, of course, is the cylinder bores. I guess the cylinder bores also have seen a little bit of heat, and that's the reason why they're sort of in the condition that they are, but nothing too bad, and you can't really feel too much with your fingernail. But I think I know what happened with this motor. I think what happened is that they installed that MLS head gasket, didn't properly clean the block, didn't get it decked or whatever, and the head gasket has blown, and it has basically caused extra heat in this engine, ruining some of the bearings, and of course, damaging the cylinder walls. So that also means that we're going to need to get new rings as well, which, yeah, I've never done that before, so that'll be fun. So if you guys know what I should do, please comment that down below. I'm thinking we just put new bearings, new rings, and then just send it. Obviously try to get the block honed, maybe take it to a machine shop, and then of course send the head off to a machine shop as well, so that can get decked and the valves lapped and checked. But this weekend, I'm headed to the snow, so I gotta get out of here, guys. Just waxing my snowboard. But yeah, I will see you guys in the next one. This is what happens when you buy a motor off Gumtree. Catch you later.